Привет всем! Hello meine lieben Zuschauer and welcome to another video from The Busy Linguist. So after posting my first video, the number one question I received from a lot of you was, Lena, what's the best way to learn a language? And to that I suppose I could probably say, well, how many drops of water are there in the ocean? Because there's not really one way or one right way to learn a language. I mean, in my own personal experience, every language that I've learned, I've approached a little bit differently. And I suppose us being unique individuals, we all learn differently. We all have different language learning goals. And I suppose my one goal was always to become pretty much a native speaker in the languages that I learned. There's a good Sprichwort auf Deutsch, and it goes, ganz oder gar nicht. And that's sort of my approach to everything, you know, all or nothing. So if you do something, or if I do something, I want to give my all and reach the best outcome possible, which for me has always been to reach, you know, fluency and basically speak like a native speaker. And so today I wanted to share to you, my journey of how I became a native speaker in German in less than 5 years. And so I basically went from being an absolute beginner, teaching myself basic phrases using the German in 15 minutes a day book, and that was literally all I used in the beginning. But I had this goal, and I really, really loved the German language. I loved the culture. I somehow felt like I could really relate to it, and Germany really is pretty much like home to me now. And I just came back after spending a year in Mannheim, and after just learning German for 4 years. And I mean, also I'm still learning it. So I suppose the key thing I also wanted to mention was that the key word here above everything is learning. Language, you know, all these quick fix solutions or programs that tell you, oh yes, become fluent with just learning one word a day. I mean, I get what they're getting at. They're trying to get you to practice the language daily, and I mean, yeah, I get the point behind them, but anybody who tells you that you're going to become a fluent, almost native speaker in a language by just learning one word a day is just completely false. I mean, any resource is a good resource that gets you practicing and using the language, but there isn't one quick fix solution, and that's something I really, really want to stress to you all. So basically, back to my German language journey. So yeah, in just 4 years, I went from being a complete beginner to studying, living in German, literally living my entire life in German, taking on law studies. And jetzt werde ich auch Deutsch sprechen, damit ihr auch sehen könnt, also dass ich wirklich so akzentfrei spreche. Und das Ding ist, als ich in Deutschland war, also wie gesagt, ich war 1 Jahr lang in Mannheim und ich habe mein Studium dort fortgesetzt, und mir wurde immer wieder gefragt so, hey, wie du bist keine Deutsche, oder wie du kommst nicht aus Deutschland. Ich habe immer so gesagt, ja, also ich bin Lettin, bin aber in Australien aufgewachsen und wohne jetzt in Deutschland seit, also ja, je nachdem, wann ich diese Leute so kennengelernt habe, aber ja, die haben mir einfach nicht geglaubt, dass ich keine Deutsche war oder bin, oder dass ich keine deutsche Vorfahren hatte. Und das Ding ist, also es gibt so ein kleines sozusagen Sprichwort oder so eine Redewendung, das ist eigentlich meine Lieblingsredewendung, und es geht so ganz oder gar nicht. Und das ist wirklich so, wie ich Sachen mache, also ganz oder gar nicht. Vielleicht habe ich das schon mal erwähnt. Aber auf jeden Fall, und ich musste auch sogar meinen Ausweis einmal zeigen, weil jemand mir nicht geglaubt hat, dass ich wirklich so aus Australien komme oder so Deutsch einfach gelernt habe. Und die haben immer so gemeint, so wie, du hast es einfach gelernt. Und ich glaube, die Leute sind es nicht gewöhnt, dass man so wirklich akzentfrei und so fließend sprechen kann, ohne irgendwie, ja, deutsche Eltern zu haben oder 10 Jahre lang in einem Land gelebt zu haben. Und ja, also jetzt zurück auf Englisch. So I suppose the biggest thing I really want to start with is your mindset is so, so important. So I know a lot of people, and it's quite unfortunate, for a lot of you it might have been compulsory to take a language at school. It might have been German, it might have been another language. And a lot of us, I know for myself as well, when we are forced to do something, I mean, I was lucky enough because I took on German as my third language at school, and that was very uncommon because I went to a sort of I went to a school where you could study two languages, and that was already something like, wow, like this is a special language school. And so I took up German. I literally threw myself into the deep end. And I started it almost at the end of year 11. So, and then just a year later, not even a year later, I think it was actually, about 8 months later or so, I was doing German continuous at university at the age of 16. And I'll explain to you my journey of how I got there. So, first of all, back to mindset. Your mindset is crucial. So, first of all, setting a goal. So, obviously, you should have a long-term goal and you should have sort of short-term goals. And I suppose when you're doing a course or having a specific study plan, these short-term goals are a lot easier to set. For example, okay, you know that you have this vocab test, or you want to, you want to get the certificate, and say an A1, A2 certificate, and these are all the specific things that you need to know or be able to say, and I suppose that helps you, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming. So I think it's super important to have an overall goal, and my overall goal was, I knew, okay, I want to become fluent, I want to pretty much be a native speaker, but I also knew that it was going to take a lot of work. But that didn't put me off, because I suppose that this all kind of ties in together with having goals, really having some way of tracking your progress or just looking at it step by step. So I really took it day by day and I immersed myself. So that's probably one of my biggest tips as well, immersion. And so right from the get-go, I would watch German films and I would listen out to, things that I knew. A really good analogy that I like to use to explain this is sort of, think about us as kids. Children spend literally 6 months to anywhere to a year or a year and a half of purely just listening. And that's exactly what I did. I listened, I watched YouTube videos, I watched podcasts. I literally, anywhere that I could grab onto the language, I would listen to it. I remember getting books from the library and looking at them. I mean, I think having an overall sort of feel for the language is crucial, because that helps you later on when it comes to building your own sentences, when it comes to speaking. And you never really know how much your brain actually picks up until it comes to you using the language. And our brain is honestly one of the most amazing things. Like, it's just incredible how much we recall even when we think that we won't remember something. And so my next tip would be, start using the language from the beginning as well. And I mean, using the language, what's important? So, you have vocab, you have sentence structures, you have verbs. So I would start just invoking words into my daily vocabulary, or as I mentioned before, practice daily. Practice daily doesn't mean, sitting there for 2-3 hours, reading about grammar, like forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. And that's something that I do with Russian now. So being a busy linguist, I don't have that much time in my day, but languages are important to me. So I find ways that work and that are effective. Immersion is something that I just can't stress enough. Really focusing on specific things, not overwhelming yourself. It might be, for example, watching a video, and what I would do is I would repeat the sentences afterwards. So I would pause it. It might just be a short video, but I would pause it. I would repeat the sentences, write the sentences down. Any new words that I didn't know, I would write them down wherever it may be. Sticky notes are also a personal favorite of mine that I used to use, and I remember this one time when I was at this point where I was really frustrated with my German learning. I was like, I don't feel like I'm learning anything. I studied German, as I said, at university, so I took it for about 1.5 years in high school, and my teacher was really good, but there were extra things that I did to speed up my German learning process, and one of those things was, unfortunately, as many people get kind of scared off about grammar, I really honed in on grammar in about this, sort of second half of my second year. And I suppose for me it was quite natural. I always knew what was lacking. So there might be a point where I got really, really good at grammar, and I realized, okay, I need to learn more vocabulary to be able to broaden my sentences. I also did a lot of writing. I loved creative writing, and I would start writing my own stories. I would start writing poems, and I would just write. I mean, it also not focusing on perfection, but really progress. And this is something I'm still continuously learning, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself, which has its plus sides, but it can also mean that you put too much pressure on yourself sometimes, and it's just counterproductive. So try and avoid that, definitely. So really strive to see progress, and it might honestly just be learning like 5 new words a day. And I feel like I'm jumping all over the place, but yeah, so I would put these words into sentences, or any new expressions I would learn, like, oh, das ist geil, or ausgerechnet jetzt, and I would try and use them in my daily life as soon as I learned them, and they almost became just locked into my brain. Because, and that's another thing that I would really say, is never learn vocabulary, except for like simple vocab maybe, so days of the week, which, okay, is pretty easy to use, but never learn vocabulary, especially when it comes to verbs or sort of more complex words, on their own. And this is something I do now with Russian. Apart from the simple words like numbers or days of the week or months of the year, and even then with all the different cases that are in Russian, I learn them in terms of context. So where would this word be used? And especially with German, because there are 10 different verbs for the English verb to include, which can get a bit confusing. And I had many frustrating moments in my German learning career, but it's honestly just about persistence, about persevering, and just knowing I will get there. So I will try and summarize and not make this video too long for you all, because I could literally talk about this all day. So number 1, really have a clear goal, and have that overall goal, but set yourself little goals. Second one is, especially if you're a busy individual, have a plan. So structure it into your daily routine. Say, for example, you might need to spend a little bit more time on a particular day learning a particular concept, and just focus on that one concept. So for example, if you really struggle when it comes to, let's just say in German, how to use, for example, separable verbs, or what even are separable verbs, particular grammatical concepts take a while to sort of own in on, and try and really find a fun way to learn them that works for you, and simplify it, and just focus on it. Doesn't matter if it takes you 3 days to learn, or a week, or 3 weeks to learn. The more you practice it, the better you will know it. And that also kind of joins in with the next point, which is to use a variety of resources. So I'll also include this in my next blog post, which I'm writing at the moment. But for example, I watched a TV series, Turkish for Anfänger, and films as well. We had a German film festival here in Adelaide, and I would go to that, and I would watch films from that. I would watch my favourite TV shows in German, and I suppose almost learn it like a child would, reading, listening, watching movies, using resources that are fun. And I absolutely just hate being bored. So anything that bored me wasn't going to be effective. So I don't care what anybody else tells you. If you're trying to learn a specific language concept or vocab, and your teacher or someone is telling you to definitely use, a particular resource, and it's not working for you, then change it. And I will also put in the link below some of my favorite resources to use. So stuff that I really love when it comes to really invoking all areas of language. So reading, writing, listening, and then of course speaking and utilizing the language. So if there's also one thing that you should all really focus on, is using the language. And I was kind of scared of this for a long time. I remember when it was coming up to my year 12 orals, and as I was saying, I had only really studied German or been taking it at school for about 6 months, and it was a lot of hard work in the beginning. And I remember my first oral presentation, and my teacher called me up randomly. She was like, okay, we're going to do them now. And I started crying. I literally started crying because I was so nervous, because my presentation didn't feel perfect enough, and I didn't feel ready enough. And I suppose you can never be really ready. And for me to build up my confidence in speaking, because I know that that's something a lot of people struggle with, is honestly to just start speaking. And I start speaking with myself. I would before I went to sleep, I would talk about my day to myself in German. I had German friends which I would practice with, and really I suppose the key thing is find someone you can practice with. Don't be afraid to start speaking, even if you forget words, even if you say really simple sentences, at least you have a starting point and you will know what you need to improve on and grow, and the more you practice, the quicker you really improve. And it wasn't easy, but I got there, and it came with daily practice. It came with really just accepting the fact that I just had to speak, and the sooner I started speaking, the sooner I was going to improve. Don't be afraid of hard work. Don't be afraid of, stumbling a little bit. Language learning also comes with its plateaus, and I remember in my second year of uni, which wasn't too long ago, it was like about 2 years ago, I reached this point, and I remember I'd just come back from Germany. I was over there for a month holiday, and I felt, really, really good. I'd just come back and used the language, and then I went into second year, and it was just this whole step up, and we were looking at Die Leiden des jungen Werthers, so a popular Goethe book, and I thought, oh my god, how am I ever going to do this? Like, this is just one step above. And my teacher really, really comforted me, I suppose, in the fact that he said, that's how language learning goes. It's almost like leveling up whenever you're playing a certain game or something, and you get to the next level and it's so much harder, and you think, oh my god, I'm not good enough. But you are good enough. Believe in yourself, because you are good enough. You've just stepped up to the next challenge, and that's an amazing thing. You should embrace that, and I suppose get comfortable with that discomfort, because it's only going to make you grow and really speed up your language learning. So I think I'm going to stop the video there, and in my next one I'm going to actually show you how I go about learning Italian, and how I also, pretty much similar to German, went from never ever really learning it to being now in an intermediate class, or how I suppose taught myself without putting too much effort in, and I'm now in an intermediate class. And as well with Russian, I will show you how I go about learning Russian, incorporating it into my day. So I wish you all a wonderful day wherever you might be, and bis bald, see you soon.